Multi-award-winning television producer Jesse Schewchuk is the founder and CEO of a thriving video training agency called Modern Muse Media, and most recently, the founder of the nonprofit organization, the Menopause Mission. Jesse has taken her experience in film and media production to truly create an impactful resource for women moving through the menopause transition. It is her goal with the Menopause Mission to make the M word mainstream. She shares her own personal experience of burnout that resulted in early menopause and uses her story to help bring resources to other women through her Menopause docuseries that can be watched for free on the Menopause Mission website. I personally met Jesse only a few months ago and instantly knew after meeting her that the Menopause Mission was an organization that I wanted to support and be involved with. So I am so excited to have her here on the podcast today to talk all about menopause, the Menopause Mission, and her vision moving forward in the future. Welcome back. I am so excited that you have joined me again in the Aligned Womb, Aligned You podcast. I'm Kate Nagai, and I am your host and womb guide on this journey. I'm here to help you to lean into the language of your menstrual cycle so that you can align yourself and awaken and activate to your womb wisdom to live the most inspired life. I am so excited to jump into this episode and to dive into today's topic. So let's get started. Today, we're diving into a topic that I have not yet touched on the podcast, but it is one that many people have been asking for. And I am so excited to dive into this with you, Jesse, because this has been your story. And I think when we think of menopause, we think of, being in our 50s and our maybe late 50s, not early menopause, and what that felt like and what that meant for you. So maybe before we even dive into the menopause conversation, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your story and what brought you into the world of menopause.
Yeah, an estrogen crash. crash. I think when we think of menopause, we think of the crone. We think of old hags. We think of no longer useful for reproduction. There's a lot of things attached to that word that we go through in regards to a grieving process of youth and youthfulness and reproductivity and all of that. So I am a worker bee. I am an A-type overachiever, have been for my entire career, award-winning television producer turned entrepreneur. And, I just go until I can't go anymore. And I've since changed those patterns, or it's something that I'm working on. But unfortunately, due to multiple burnouts and stress, I found myself in very early menopause. I'm talking, I had my last period at 42. It was actually on my 42nd birthday.
Wow.
So I'll never forget it. Talk about the universe sending a message that something profound is going to come from this. So I didn't know, of course, until 1 year later, because we don't know we're menopausal until we are 12 months past the date of our last period. But that was the case. And so probably a few months after the 1 year mark, I started to definitely feel a lot of symptoms of spiraling in regards to mood, weight gain, anxiety, insomnia, night sweats. It was just a lot of shifts that were coming in and happening quite rapidly. And my confidence was just shot. And in June of 2022, yes, I found myself crying relentlessly in bed. I couldn't actually get out of bed for a couple of days. And this isn't like me. I am the throw on the cape, grin and bear it, put your big girl panties on, all of the paradigms that I've had to kind of work through. And my daughter came and sat on the side of the bed. And I was crying in a way that I cried when my mom died when I was very young. Like, this was soul crying and I couldn't stop. And she said, "Mommy, do I need to call someone for help?" And I was like, "No, baby, I do."
Mhm.
At the time, I was on a waiting list to get into the menopausal clinic at the Grey Nuns Hospital, where they have a program here in Edmonton, Alberta. But there was still plenty of time. From what I understood, the wait can be almost 2 years long, and I needed to do something. So I actually reached out to my naturopath, and we went through this process over the next few months of really intensive IV therapy. It was incredibly costly. It was incredibly worth it. I say to this day, it saved my life, because what we did is we started to actually treat the burnout first. My cortisol had actually flatlined, and I didn't even have any left. Never mind. I was past the point of high. And so, yeah, that was the beginning of this healing journey from so many different things, right? A life of drive and multiple crashes.
Now, your absence of a period that you had, because you were really young still, did you think that that was menopause, or did you think that this is just one of those situations where I'm not getting my period? Because that does happen with amenorrhea and other disorders like PCOS, where we can go months without a period. What signaled to you that it was menopause?
I was really lucky in the fact that my doctor is hypervigilant, sends me for blood work, listens to me, and sends me often for referrals in regards to anything. I am a bit of a hypochondriac, and I don't say that in jest. It's when you have a parent die at a young age, this is really common to think you're going to die all the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's hard. It sucks. You really do. You're just like, your demise is always like right in front of you, because it happened and it's real, and it happened so young. So you can just see that how fragile life is. So she had sent me for blood work, and we saw my FSH levels rising. So it was on my radar. It was on my radar. Now, that being said, what menopause looked like and the power of hormones, I was totally clueless. Totally clueless. I gained 20 pounds in a very short amount of time. I was running the same. I was eating the same. I was in a new relationship and things were amazing. My daughter was doing well. I was like, nothing's wrong. Why is everything wrong? It was just an eye-opener to me about how impactful this transition can be, and that often there are misdiagnoses in regards to symptoms and signs that could actually be perimenopause, which can start as early as 35.
Yeah.
And menopause, often misdiagnosed as depression or anxiety and then treated as such rather than treating the hormones. And I only know this, Kate, because what I ended up doing is I needed answers. I'm an award-winning television producer by trade. I could do it in my sleep. So I did what I knew what to do. I started to create a documentary series so that I could get into the offices of the experts in this field without having to make appointments or do consultations. They want the truth to be heard, the facts to be heard, their story to be heard. And so I started to interview experts, one after another, after another, after another, after another. And I just sponged it all up.
You know, I'm 43 right now, and I lost my dad a year and a half ago. And that loss, like, it's really actually, if you go beyond that loss, like if we look at, I had my son at 39. I stopped breastfeeding because I breastfed him through COVID, because COVID was COVID and we didn't know what it was. So I kept breastfeeding him. So I often put a lot of my depletion, my energy, my tiredness, my moodiness towards those things. And then I stopped breastfeeding my son. And then a year later, my dad dies. And I went into anxiety and panic attacks for the first time in my life. My period started to shorten. And I'm very lucky as well that I have a really great naturopathic doctor who was like, okay, let's dive in. Let's start looking at all the hormones. I also, because of the work that I do, was a little aware of what to look for and to go, okay, these are not just coincidental, right? Like I could probably put the breastfeeding and the pregnancy at 39 as coincidental, but now like there's something bigger happening here. And if it is hormonal, I want it addressed, right? Like I want to extend my hormones as long as possible. And in fact, I went to go start seeing an acupuncturist as well, going, whatever you can do to lengthen my cycle. Like I want you to keep my cycle vital. I might be in the transition, but this is like the first little alarm that was going off. And for me, it was just a small alarm of just knowing that personality change. But it's something now that I keep my eye on of like, how often am I tired? How often am I grouchy and overreacting or just feeling sensitive to sound? I think you and I were in a meeting just last week, and I was like, I just cannot, this past month, it's like the sound so loud in my house. And that was like the first, like when you said it, I was like, that might not be PMS. That might be this another little indicator for me to watch for my perimenopause. And so I think that the work that you're doing now, you're still doing your old work, but this new thing that you're doing, which we'll get into, of really creating this focus around menopause and how we can start to educate women just to be curious, right? Like I think that's the first step. Like you had a physician that was willing to do the blood work, to be curious with you and not write you off, to hear you out. I was lucky to have resources and to also have a little bit of my own resources of going, okay, there's starting to be some patterns here. So for me, like this is the information I think a lot of women in perimenopause needs to hear, is that there are these little signs, these little things. It doesn't mean that menopause is coming tomorrow, but that these could be indicators when we feel like we're irrational, when we're feeling like, we're not our normal self, or that we're really exhausted and run down, that it might be our cue to investigate a little bit deeper.
Oh, I love that you mentioned the sound. Itchy ears is another one that I've actually just discovered from somebody else, because when you don't have the estrogen, you don't have as much mucus, as much. Anyway, it's just all about estrogen receptors. Kate, I discovered through this journey, there are, some say over 60, some say over 80 signs and symptoms that are related to perimenopause and menopause. I'll never forget, core memory. We're driving, my partner and I, to the mountains or something. We're getting ready for a trip, and he often does this and now knows not to because of my reaction, but he'll turn up the music and then start a conversation. Right. And I'm unable to process both. So, I mean, my reaction was so strong. I went and I slammed the dashboard and I shut it off. And he's like, holy, what just happened? And that was a really, really pinnacle point for that auditory agitation. Now that I've talked to my brain expert and know that our gray matter actually dissipates because the estrogen receptors are not getting the estrogen in our brains. And if you actually took a brain scan, which I did, and you see that our size of brain changes, how can the rest of us not be impacted? Like everything on our body is impacted by this. So yes, there's itchy ears. Yes, there's crawly skin. Yes, there's restless leg syndrome. Yes, there's insomnia. There's night sweats. You're drenching your sheets. And my ADHD, which I didn't even know I had, because it shows up in women as perfectionism and driven and highly successful, amped right up. And that, I think, was some of that auditory stuff for me, because I never realized how much it bothered me before. And then it's like somebody went and turned the volume on my receptors, on my auditory receptors. So for Christmas, Lance bought me little loop earplugs, which means it cancels out the background noise and you can still have a conversation. And really? that was a game changer. Yes. Yeah, they're fabulous.
I'm gonna have to look into those, because lately in our household, the big thing has been of me going, kids, stop fighting. And they're like, we're not fighting, we're just talking. And I'm like, it sounds like fighting because everything is amped up. So yes.
Oh. They're amazing. And I think it was more like Merry Christmas to me. for him than it was Merry Christmas to you. Please don't hurt me.
Well,
So, yeah.
I think being in this line of work that I'm in, I'm a little bit prepared for the perimenopause and what's to come because of a lot of the training that I have that has guided me and taught me that perimenopause in many ways is like your PMS amplified for a very extended long time. And I think for most of us women, when we are fearful of menopause, because we probably all have had aunts or parents, mothers that have, told us like the night sweats, the irritability, like they paint the ugly picture of how this is like horrendous time of your life. It's the worst years ever. But I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that so many of us haven't been taught how to really live in alignment or live in flow in that second half of our cycle, which really mimics perimenopause and menopause, and how if we are irritated, if we are sensitive sound in our PMS phase in the week before our period, that's most likely going to be similar symptoms that we potentially could experience amplified in our perimenopause.
Yes. And what's interesting, I love that you said you addressed what you heard from your relatives and such, because for a lot of women, and I have a lot of these conversations every day, I'm the menopause lady now, right? Is relatives didn't talk about it at all. And so that's the thing that was the case for me. My mom passed away when I was in my early 20s, and my grandmother recently passed away. And my aunts, all I knew was the hot flashes, and it was just always like, put me by a window and put me, and it's almost made to be humorous. And that is all I knew of menopause. Okay, I'm just going to need to layer up or layer down because you know that your body's going to heat up. To be honest with you, I've experienced probably 1 or 2 hot flashes in the duration of this transition. And that's usually when I've been really, really nervous. It was on a date with my partner. And so I was all like climbing, and all of a sudden I'm like dripping. And it's like, what is happening to me? That was a hot flash. And I think I've experienced it one other time right before public speaking. So it was my body. I was actually in total duress. And that was like the triggering response for it. Otherwise, I didn't. But all of these other things that nobody ever talked about. One, because we don't talk about these things because they're dirty and shameful, and just deal with it. And 2, because maybe they didn't even actually know that a lot of the stuff that they were experiencing was related to transition versus anxiety and depression. I was a sound sleeper. I've been a sound sleeper my whole life. The joke with my family is, put me anywhere, lean me against a pole, like put me on a chair and I'll fall asleep wherever I am. When I was going through this, I was waking up with panic between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. And I'm hearing that's like what we'll say is the witching hour, with endearment, of course. But, there's this time frame and I couldn't get back to sleep, and it was the mind race. And I've always had an anxiety. I've always had mind race, but I've also always slept through the night. And so that was a key indicator for me. And once that sleep was lacking, I was disturbed. I'm not going to lie. It destroyed me. And sleep was, is so significant. And that's one of the biggest things that can get impacted.
So what I'm hearing from you, and from what I've kind of experienced in these early 40s here, of just these subtle little changes, these little tiny things that are not normal to you, can be indicators that we're starting to do this transition. For people that are starting to notice, whether it is changes in their cycle, whether it is that they're waking up when they should be sleeping, whether it is having to pee a lot, or that their shoulder's frozen, these little signs or symptoms that are popping up, what would be your advice for them as their next best step? Because I think a lot of us just write it off of, oh, I must have pulled something in my shoulder, or, oh, I'm too busy at work and I'm having insomnia, right? Like we start to write off these things versus just being curious about them and going, hey, wait a minute, this could be something different. So for women that are potentially in this perimenopause years that are seeing these changes, what would be your first piece of advice for them?
I mean, the number one thing would be paying attention to oneself, because we dismiss ourselves even more than, like, we talk about doctors being dismissive or partners being dismissive. And it's like, well, it starts with us, right? We are often in the ages while going through this transition, and statistically, it's starting to show up earlier and earlier, likely due to stress levels and all of the multiple roles that women are now functioning with. And so before, we would just be the caregiver, we'd be the home provider. And now we are all of the things. We know this. And I think we're starting to pay more attention to ourselves. The word self-care actually has meaning, and it doesn't necessarily mean wine in a bath. It means signing up for that class that you love, but it also means knowing your body. Right before I went into transition, I was actually working with my cousin, I know who you know, Chloe Skurlak, in regards to charting. And I'd never, ever really felt so empowered of knowing my body. I then knew, like, that I was actually on a shorter cycle for the most of my life. I didn't have too much PMS, really. My periods weren't super painful. They were really, really consistent. I wouldn't go for months and months without a period, but I was just starting to, like, get to know things. And that was such a gift, because just in that small amount of time, I was able to know when things were different. And I think that that's key, is that shoulder, that knee pain. I have trouble getting into bed. Well, it's just because I'm over 40. This is what everybody says is going to happen. We just need to accept it. We don't need to accept it. There are so many things we can do. We can age gracefully. We can stay active. There's longevity, and there is joy, and there's happiness. And so self-awareness is one, that paying attention, and then education. And so who are some people that you can talk to? What is a community that you can get involved with? Because one of the biggest things that I'm hearing, Kate, is I think I'm going crazy. I think I'm losing my mind. Well, remember that whole gray matter thing that I was talking about? Or maybe it's anyway, matter. It matters, because the matter goes away, you are literally losing your mind. That is one of the names of my episodes of the documentary series with the brain expert, because we are literally losing our minds, and we'll just suffer in silence. We'll just head down, make the lunches, run off to work, do the things, appease the clients, people please, and not actually go, okay, wait a minute. Maybe I'm not actually crazy. Maybe I'm not really losing my mind. There's education. And that's where this came in, this movement that I started, because women really don't know a lot about their own bodies and a lot about what's going on with this transition.
Let's talk about this movement, because this was how we actually met, was through your organization. Going through early menopause, you created a nonprofit organization. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the Menopause mission?
Yes, because I didn't have enough on my plate. I had to. I was being called to do this work. So I started to talk to people, and I'm a wear my heart on my sleeve person. I do a lot of networking for my other business, Modern Muse Media. And so I'm out among people all the time. And I'm not that person that goes, how are you doing? And it's like, fine. Yeah, great. Right. I'm like, no, I've actually been really struggling. And people could tell I wasn't my vibrant self. I mean, nobody would say it, but I had gained quite a bit of weight. Like, you know what I mean? I just wasn't showing up in the same way. And so I was real and vulnerable about that, and just in conversations with both men and women. Talk about making people feel uncomfortable. And so, and then it was just like, oh my gosh, me too. Oh my gosh, my wife. Oh my gosh, my sister. One woman who I developed a deep connection with told me about her cousin who actually died by suicide. And they now know it was likely due to menopause. Well, if that didn't hit home, I don't know what could, because I was there. I was like, plans were being made. And if I was going through this, then how many other women or going through this in silence and suffering in silence and just not saying anything and grinning and bearing it. And that's just like, it's just so uncool. So I decided that we needed to make this M word mainstream. And that's our slogan. We have to catalyze conversations, reduce the stigma, get rid of the stigma in and around menopause. On the other side of it, you hear a lot of women speaking, the Helen Mirrens, the Oprah Winfrey's. It's this don't care what anybody thinks, finding your inner child self, this playfulness, this joyfulness, this creativeness. There's so many beautiful and wonderful things. If we could just connect with the community to see us through this transition, we don't have to suffer alone. And so I started the nonprofit. We launched it in October for Menopause Month, and we sold out our first event. There's a need.
Yes. And the Menopause Mission, it has these events that you just discussed, the one that we had in October. We're having another one on May 5th. If anybody that's listening that's like, I need to learn more. But there's more than just these events. You are also trying to make community and to build these events so that they are just regular exposure all the time. And one thing I really like of what part of your vision is getting men included, having a space for men to have awareness and how to support their partners or support their coworkers. Like realistically, this is happening to everybody. So how can we now make this, like you said, the M word mainstream, but how can we break this down to that this is a woman's problem? Just like with periods, this is not just a woman's problem. This is a community problem. And so how can we create the resources? And I love that. I love that you want to get men involved.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. My pro partner, what he's been through. And let's remove, and I mean, I'm not correcting you. I'm just working with language here, the word problem and put in, this is a human experience.
Yeah.
And over 50% of the population is going to go through this experience. And workplaces need to know how to deal with this experience, because if we're experiencing transition in a much more exacerbated way due to high levels of stress, due to societal demands, due to the way we are just structured, then there are days where this can be debilitating. And where is that on the radar for everyone? For everyone. So we have to start talking about this. I'm walking around and I don't look like a menopausal woman according to what people think a menopausal woman should look like. And I think that's a really good thing, right? And so that's the gift, is that this happens for women, in their 30s or whenever, if they have to go through any kind of surgery, right? And so what is the name of the surgery? It's evading me right now.
Hysterectomy?
Yes, a hysterectomy. Thank you. So this is not just women in their 50s or 60s. And in fact, by their 60s, they're likely on the other side of it. But that's what we kind of align with, is like, oh, that's menopause, like for them. And it's like,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's, there was a campaign that was here in Edmonton called "Make It Awkward," and I think that we're like the "Make It Awkward" for menopause. Like, let's just talk about this stuff until it's not awkward anymore. Until it's just like, how do you take your coffee? Oh, menopause. You know.
Exactly. I love that, and I love that. Like, the menopause mission isn't just. I think sometimes when we think of organizations, there are these people that are working behind and we're funding research or we are maybe writing articles, but you are like in it. I think that's what I really love about the Menopause Mission, is that there is these events that we try to hold where it is deeper awareness with guest speakers. There is these coffee connection dates where you're trying to build community, both here in Edmonton, but also in rural communities. We're expanding out now of looking at how can we bring this information, this support on a monthly, regular basis to women everywhere. And then you also created a docuseries, which is a big feat all on its own. You've aired all of season 1 and you're about to
Mhm.
air season 2, which
Yeah.
is amazing. Do you want to talk a little bit about this docu-series that you've created?
Yes. So, as I mentioned, I did what I knew best, and it makes people chuckle because it's like, yeah, so you just like went out and got a license and created a documentary series because that was easy for you. But I mean, I've lived and breathed video since I was 10 years old with my grandma and grandpa's camcorder, right? So it was easy for me. I knew exactly what I could go on autopilot. And I had an intern. I had a student from the NAET Radio and Television Arts program, and she was, oh, I don't know what I would do without her. So huge shout out to Cavell, but she honestly helped me line everything up and get everything going. And so I interviewed all different kinds of experts of all through so many different modalities. So we talked to a lot of the people that I had already worked with and knew, and you start with what you know, right? And so I interviewed my acupuncturist, who was also my doula. So we talked about my journey and many women's journeys from birth through to transition and all of the years in between. So it was a beautiful story. I talked to my naturopath in regards to the IV therapies and where I was at and where a lot of women were at. It was actually my naturopath who, by the time we were done, and I'd spent quite a significant amount of money, had said, I think that you may need to, when you get into the clinic, you may need to consider hormones, of which I am now on. I'm very open about hormone therapy. And I finally got into the menopause clinic, which took, over a year and a half. I interviewed a doctor in regards to hormone replacement therapy. I've interviewed just all different kinds of experts and their different position and their different take on it. And I really, really wanted an extremely well-rounded representation, whatever one's views are. I'm open because, to be honest with you, like I almost took my life. And so what I say is that if it helps you, then I'm behind you. I'm behind you. I mean, that's barring, drinking all day or drug abuse or anything like that. But if it's healthful for you and if it helps you, I am behind it. And so I am just open to all of the things because I used a cross section of modalities. I went for neurofeedback with Dr. Kara, and that helped with my ADHD symptoms. And that's actually how I was originally diagnosed, is by taking a look at my brain and how my brain was impacted. And so it has been an incredibly exploratory journey for me, with the ability to just gain and garner so many different perspectives. And I love that because that's who I feel I represent, is the woman who is standing here going, just please help me.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's something so valuable in that you just said about all different perspectives, because I think that is one of the big hurdles that we're facing right now in society, is that there's only one way, or that we've really only promoted one way. And I think when the true magic happens is when we stop promoting one way and we start looking at how, if everybody just came together and worked together and we all had an expertise of some sort, but we leaned on others for a different perspective, if we opened ourselves up to different perspectives, that's when we truly create the well-rounded experience for anybody who is wanting to heal and was wanting to explore their health and their wellness. I know that was my story with fertility, is that, Western medicine, and they weren't wrong of saying surgery, remove your fallopian tubes. With the information that doctor had and her education, that was the right call that she was making. But where the disconnect was that she couldn't provide me with any other information to go get curious about. She didn't have to have the answers. She just didn't have any resources to say, well, if this doesn't feel right, go here. Instead, that left a lot of responsibility on me. And me, like you, we're powerhouses. We're like, we're going to take the tools we have and we're going to find the damn answers. And so, when I was on my fertility journey, I had never done acupuncture. I had never done Reiki. I had never done anything that seemed alternative. And here I was like, I'm willing to do anything and everything. And then now look at me now. I used to work in an office and now I teach women about their menstrual cycles. So
I love it.
It's just, I think that is the power, is that when we have supports, whether there be physicians or whatever, saying, this is my specialty, but you know what? There is some research, I haven't looked into it, that says nutrition might be helpful, or that, maybe a brain scan, but just giving us these little tools. And I think that's the beauty of what you're offering right now with your docuseries, with the menopause missions events, is that you're creating exposure from all different lenses and telling women, take what feels right for you. Take a starting point and know that if that starting point doesn't feel right, there's still B, C, D, E, F, all the way through the alphabet, right? Like there's still so many options.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. We had an expert come in for our last event, and I can't confirm yet whether she'll be back for morning yoga, but she teaches hormone yoga therapy. And this is a very specific kind of movement. And I went on camera in the documentary series and did this, and trust me, it is not pretty. As she would say, it's just like the ugliest kind of yoga. Like it's just kind of crazy. But it actually works on the different organs, like the pituitary and stuff, and in regards to hormone release. And it works magically for some of her clients. And so who would have thunk that, maybe there's a type of yoga, and some people are like, well, I tried yoga. Maybe there's a type of yoga that could help you. Maybe it is acupuncture. Maybe it is IV therapy. Maybe it is hormone replacement therapy, and the studies around all of this were not done. Are starting to just like emerge immensely in all areas, which is amazing. But up until, don't quote me on this because it's from the documentary series and I interviewed someone, but I would say mid 80s, any of the medical research for women was done on men.
1992.
Was it you?
It was I don't think it was me on the docuseries, but it was 1992 that we were the first time we were brought into medical studies.
Like, come on. So, it's just absolutely wild. There is a lot of information out there. There's a lot of false information out there. And so rather than somebody needing to hit the keyboard and do all of their own research, what we're doing is creating these coffee conversations, these events for women to come and speak directly to experts without having to make an appointment, without having to do a consultation. At this event, we're going to have 3 incredible experts in a variety of areas. I'm pleased to say that you may be one of them. and I think that's going to be incredible. But we'll also have somebody speaking in regards to hormone therapies, and we'll also have somebody speaking into more naturopathic. And so I really wanted to provide a diverse amount of information, no matter what your belief system, no matter what your values are, and that they all matter. They all matter, and you matter. And so instead of having to kind of get that frustration and go down the rabbit hole, we're creating this safe space where you can also sit and have a coffee or tea with someone going through a similar experience and go, I can't handle my kids right now, or I can't seem to get along with my husband, or I can't seem to keep my together, And so, safe, amazing space to connect with community and with experts.
And to feel, I think there's something so powerful when you are in a room and all you see is a sea of other people that are experiencing the exact same thing you are. It may not be the exact story, but you know that they're there because something doesn't feel right in their body. Something isn't moving the way they thought it would in this part of their years in their life, right? And so knowing that you're not alone asking these bigger questions of like, is it me? Or am I in the wrong marriage? Or, why can't I handle my kids? Or, why am I so burnt out at work? Do I need to quit my job? Right? Like all these things, there is something bigger going on. And it's so powerful when you see that you're not the only one, or that you're not even one of 5. Like there's all these women there.
No, it's something like, again, I never love to quote statistics. One, because I'm menopausal and memory is like so much better than it was, but still a lot of work to do. We do build our brains back, by the way. We actually do. They do. We do bounce back from this. So hope again on the other side. But something like 1/3 of the population of women is going to be or already is in menopause all at the same time, right? And so it's just like, this is really relevant to everything, to the functionality of our society.
Yeah. You know, and I was reading a book, it's a few years ago, and I love this book. I use it all the time. It's called The Female Brain. And in The Female Brain, she does go through like all stages of your life, from like puberty all the way. Well, actually, she starts at birth, the brain for a female, all the way to postmenopause. But one thing that she writes in there that's stuck with me for years now is that because women are having children later in life, so many, we're going to see this a lot more now, is that so many women are going to be going through perimenopause and menopause when their daughters are going through puberty. And menopause is considered our second puberty.
Ding, 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 ding. We've got a winner. So my daughter and I, holy God. So my partner and I, we recently moved in together, and I think that's probably a good thing, because maybe he even acts like a little bit of a buffer or a dynamic where we can't be screaming at each other all the time. But honestly, it was the Gilmore Girls gone wild, and I called our house hormone household. We definitely seem to be a bit more on the other side of it, probably because I'm much more hormonally balanced. And she is quite a bit too. So we have the less like screaming matches and door slamming. But for a while we did not have capacity for each other. And that was really hard, because my daughter and I were on our own together for 9 years. And so we were the Gilmore Girls. We are very, very close. And I don't want to be fighting for all the time. Nobody wants that. But it was almost like we couldn't help it. Like we just didn't have the tools, access to the tools, right? So everything is flipped. Everything is just off kilter. And no matter how much work I had done, which I had done a lot going into this transition, I was not prepared to like literally not have access to my tools. It's just like, I totally forgot how to tap. I totally forgot how to self-regulate. I totally forgot, it was just like blinded by the light of transition. And so, that's a tough one to pull through,
And my advice for women going through that experience of menopause and puberty at the same time, which is going to be my story, like I have a 10-year-old, is that there is so much beauty and self-compassion in knowing that even if you don't do it perfectly, you know why it's happening. And so you can have those conversations. We don't like each other right now, but this is like teaching your child about puberty and hormone changes and teaching yourself about it. Then it's like, there's this little bit of compassion knowing we're not in a good place right now, but this is not going to be forever. This is actually a hormonal thing. Like, I think there's so much more love and compassion we can give to ourselves when we have that information, that resource, versus saying like, I don't know who this child is anymore. Right? And like being able to,
and I don't know who this mother is anymore. I mean, I love that you said that, because we had so many emotional cries where it's like, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, dear. Say that. Why are those words coming out of my mouth? Like, why am I acting like this? You don't understand me. It's like, yes, I do.
I love it. I love it.
it. This is all like replay.
But there's so much more love that can happen, and you can come out of it, both of you, with like a deeper connection, even though it didn't feel like you were connected at the time, but because you both had compassion of where the other one was, right? Like, I don't know.
Without question.
Yeah.
I mean, she really would say, you don't know what I'm going through. And I was like, I'm going through it too. And it's, yeah. So with just like anything, when you go through something like that with another individual, another human, you do come out on the other side closer. And so, I think we will be seeing a lot more of that. And what I implore women to do is pay attention and let it not be dismissed as depression. Because it may feel like depression, it may be depression, but may be caused by something else. And so if you're treating the root cause, then you may not need to treat the depression, because then you're kind of just masking a symptom, whereas you may actually get a symptom to go away with treating the root cause. And so I'm really fortunate to be on the other side, to have treated the root cause. I feel pretty balanced. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's not perfect. Like, even with hormone therapy, I'm in a really low dose because I want to be. That's my preference. My mom did die of breast cancer. The research that they did after the Women's Health Initiative in the 90s is suggesting that there was a lot of inaccuracies. And there's a ton of research being done that numbers directly related to hormone therapy and breast cancer wouldn't even be impacted until after over 60. Mm-hmm. With me being in my early 40s, I'm actually, without estrogen, at a way higher risk of heart disease, diabetes, and dementia. Mm-hmm. And so it's getting informed, getting the education. Again, not for everybody. There are other ways that you can support your hormones through nutrition, through exercise. All of these things have been a part of my journey. And knowing that I'm not running big time anymore, I'm doing more weights and strength training. And that actually really, really helps build my strength and keep my mood balanced and all of those things. What I know now that I wish I knew then. And that's really what I hope with the Menopause Mission, is to provide that place to connect women with experts, with information, and with other women going through the experience.
I love that. So let's talk about the Menopause Mission. May 5th.
Mayhem and menopause. So yeah, we know that it can feel like mayhem. Definitely. It's a play on the May. We wanted to do it in May because it's the month of the Mother's Day, and a very representative month of a woman. Whether you are a mother, have a mother, know a mother, this is definitely a sacred and safe space. And so we also want to acknowledge it is on the Missing Women's, help me here, Kate, that's...
I just know it's the Red Dress Day, but it does stand for something. It's MM.
Yes. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I put myself on the spot. Anyway, that was not planned for, but now we will plan to honor that and include that in our day as well. So that's really, really important to us, because that's also a very significant women's initiative. And so May 5th, it is all day. We're not starting too early. For those that are feeling exhausted and wiped out and need their rest, we start at 10. For those that want to come check out some yoga in the morning, you're welcome to come an hour earlier. So we'll be open for that at 9. And we're going to go till about 4 in the afternoon, provide you with 3 amazing experts that you're going to get to talk to each of them throughout the day, and opportunities for networking and connection with other women throughout the day as well. We're going to feed you a wonderfully nutritious lunch, have snacks there throughout the day, because we love our snacks. At least I do. I'm a bit of a grazer. And yeah, it's all I can say is that for all of the feedback that we received from the event in October, the last line is, what would you like? And everyone, most people just wrote more of this. So it's a place where you can come and you'll leave feeling better.
And we have incredible sponsors that are setting up tables where you get to ask even them some information about how they're working with menopause and helping menopause. So there'll be a lot of resources there, which I'm super excited about.
And door prizes. Who doesn't love prizes?
And just so we can go back a little bit, I did look it up. It is for the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. So I just wanted to clarify that, because that is an important thing. And I didn't want to leave the podcast being like, we don't know what it is. It's for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls.
Thank you. I didn't want to get it wrong. I appreciate you you doing that. So yeah, I implore you, come and join us on May 5th. It is going to be an incredibly powerful day. And if any of this resonated with you, if you're feeling kind of like off or something's not right and you're 35 and older, so this again is not for 50 or 60 only. It is inclusive of any woman who maybe feels called to this and says, you know what, that's for me, I'm in. And we'd love to see you.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be at the event. So please, everyone, come. The link to the Eventbrite to buy your ticket for the event, it is in the show notes below. You want to grab them because we only have so many. So make sure that you go and snag yours sooner than later. And then, yeah, if you are there, make sure you seek out Jesse or myself and come connect with us because we would love to meet you and chat. So thank you, everyone.
Definitely.
And thank you, Jesse, for being here.
Oh, thank you, Kate. Thanks for providing a platform for all of this. So wonderful.
Well, thank you for sharing your story because it's not always easy to share our stories. And I think it's women that are feeling safe. You know, I think for us to share our stories, we have to have safety in our story and feel like we have a platform where it feels safe to share it. So thank you for coming here and sharing it. Friends, have you had a chance to download my new free ebook? Maybe it's not you. The Truth on PMS and How You Can Take Back Control of Your Cycle is now available. This is truly a book that I think needs to be in the hands of every woman who struggles with the second half of their menstrual cycle. So if this is you, click on the link in the show notes and download your free copy today. And remember to subscribe to this podcast and share a review if you loved this episode. Until next time, remember, womb wisdom equals connection to self, which ultimately equals inspired living.